Okay, good morning everyone. Thank you very much indeed for joining us for a joint webinar on knowledge management between Hydra and Paul Whiffen from Hartfield KM Consulting. I think we're just about ready to begin, so let's get started.
Thanks, James. So good morning everybody. We're going to have a session in two parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about knowledge management overall and in general, what it is first of all. What is this knowledge management thing that everybody is so enthusiastic about these days? What are the benefits? What are the benefits to the business? Obviously we need to add value. What does it look like? I've come across all sorts of different versions of what people think knowledge management is, from a database to a full, complete culture change right across the organization. And what does it take to implement KM across the organization? Then James will talk about the Hydra system, including the best practice blueprints, which I've seen, and these are really powerful stuff. And then we'll close with a question and answer session. Okay, so just to introduce myself a little bit more, I've been working in knowledge management since 1997. In fact, it's exactly 20 years and 1 month since I first came across KM. I've been head of KM for 3 organizations, 2 complete startups and 1 building on early KM attempts. 3 very different sectors actually, humanitarian aid, oil and gas engineering and missile systems engineering, so completely different organizations in completely different sectors. But what was interesting is in all 3 there are some common things. They all wanted to improve their corporate memory, improve their team learning, actually create lessons identified that made a difference rather than just collect lessons learned and store them somewhere, improve their communities of practice, and also address the risk from people retiring. There's quite a significant risk from key people leaving or retiring from the organization with critical knowledge. How do you mitigate that risk? Also consultancy to various other sectors, from in the nuclear industry to pet food supplies to teachers. And the key thing for me is to make the distinction between strategic and tactical knowledge management, by which I mean, in simple terms, managing the right knowledge as well as managing the knowledge right. So it's about having knowledge plans for the organization, for projects and functions, as well as doing tactical KM activities like learning before, during, after, and knowledge transfer and so on. And lastly, as you can see there on the slide, early days thinking about artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence and machine learning, and what do they mean in terms of relationship to knowledge management? I don't pretend to be an expert. In fact, I haven't found anybody who knows the full answer in all these things, but making some progress now in thinking about the links between AI and machine learning and knowledge management. Okay, so my first question is, do any of these questions look or sound familiar? So, for example, we keep producing lessons learned that don't make a difference. What are we doing wrong? So this point I made before about lots of organizations, they collect lessons learned, file them somewhere, but they don't make a difference to the future. Or John Smith is leaving soon. He's the only one who knows how to do this key activity. It's critical knowledge to the business. It's a risk. How do you manage the risk of his departure? More positively, we just had a major success. Not at all obvious or intuitive about how it happened. So how do we take that success and broadcast that into the future for future projects? This project just made the same mistake as Project X did 5 years ago. Why aren't we learning? That's something I've heard so many times. It's really frustrating. And many of our communities seem to be dying. How do we revitalize them? The key question then, what is this thing called knowledge management? As I say, I've heard it called I've heard so many different things called the same thing, knowledge management, from a database to a full cultural thing. But for me, it's very simple. It's a principle or a philosophy of treating what we know as an organizational asset. What we know, our know-how, both individually and collectively, just like we do with finances, facilities and people. And if we're serious, if we really mean what we say about treating what we know as an asset, then we need proper structure, the frameworks, language, roles, processes, technology and governance to manage that knowledge asset just like the others. Over the years, I've come across many definitions of knowledge management, probably several dozen actually, that's no exaggeration. But each time I always come back to one of the originals I first came across almost 20 years ago now, from Larry Prusak, I actually met Larry, one of my heroes, one of the original KM gurus. And I love this definition. Knowledge management is the attempt to recognize what is essentially a human asset. You know, it's not a computer database, it's a human thing in the minds of individuals, and leverage it into a corporate asset that can be used by a broader set of individuals on whose decisions the company depends. And another reason I love this definition is it's about saying we don't just treat or manage our knowledge and be organized about our knowledge because it's a nice thing to do or because we like to be organized, but it's about lifting company performance, helping us individually and collectively, whether it's a project team or a community or an individual working on something, because we want to improve the bottom line. We take better decisions on behalf of the company. So, benefits from knowledge management. I mean, I've seen so many benefits over the years, that's why I'm still an enthusiast of the whole profession after 20 years. But just picking out a handful there, I won't go through them all. More repeat successes, fewer repeat failures. I mean, we know, even as an individual, that when we make a mistake, if we step back, think about what do we do wrong so we can do it better next time, we do it better next time. Or if we build on our successes, we actually take the time to think about why do we have such a success. It might be something we just did by accident. It's the same with organizations and teams. Taking the time out to think about what, you know, why did we do it so well or not so well, and taking that learning forward. It's very simple, really. Enhanced innovation, by which I mean it's not just a team saying we've learned something new, but actually another team learned the same thing new in the same organization perhaps 2 years earlier. We want proper, true innovation as opposed to local innovation. I've already talked about informed decision making. Enhanced risk mitigation. I mean, in today's world, we largely mitigate risk through knowledge. So just having good, structured, upfront knowledge management is a fantastic way to mitigate risks in all sorts of contexts in today's organizations. Increased customer satisfaction. I've seen so many times where customers are really pleased to see that their key suppliers are managing what they know, consciously learning. The benefits to the customer, of course, are really fantastic. Improved turnaround times on projects, cost saved, time saved. More adaptable and agile organization. The world is a fast-moving place. It seems to be changing with accelerating changes over the years. We need to be able to adapt to that economically, politically. It changes so fast. Organizations need to be more adaptable and agile to cope with that. And knowledge management certainly is an enabler of that. We already talked about increased profit margin and financial efficiencies from turning around projects and other deliveries. So there's all sorts of benefits from project management. So what does knowledge management look like? Well, actually, if we're treating it as a profession, managing our knowledge asset, we need common language and frameworks. So what I have seen sometimes is an individual or a team or a part of an organization managing their knowledge in one area or another area, perhaps doing an individual initiative, knowledge transfers or lessons learned. But actually what we need is a consistent approach using common language and frameworks across the organization, so that when people talk about strategic knowledge or communities of practice, or they're talking about their competitive knowledge assets, people understand what that means. So we have common language and frameworks for both managing the right knowledge and managing the knowledge right. Established knowledge roles at the center, a common KM team, but also part-time, typically, knowledge managers distributed out in the business across the projects and the functions. Proven processes for managing knowledge, as I say, not just for managing the right knowledge, but communities of practice, purpose and interests, learning before, during and after, knowledge cafes, knowledge markets. All these things are proven and applied routinely across the business. Enabling and supporting technology. So we have technology that supports the capturing of knowledge, that supports the effective running of communities of practice and so on. And of course we need KM as a professional discipline to be embedded into corporate standards with appropriate governance. Otherwise it will eventually drift away. It has to become eventually part of the normal way we do business. But more than anything, my experience has taught me in implementing knowledge management across 3 different organizations in 3 different cultures that actually KM needs to be part of the way we do business, the way people operate. It needs to be a culture that recognizes, expects and applies the approach. Otherwise, if we don't have that, eventually KM will die. More of a diagrammatic approach just to show in practice what KM can look like. So we talk about having a key activity. So this is anything that's important to your organization that you want to apply with continuous performance improvement. So it's any key activity or a project stage typically. So you apply learning before, during and after, often called the peer assist, the after action review and the learning review. And we interact the lessons applied into knowledge assets and make sure they're kept up to date. So we keep refreshing our knowledge assets and knowledge domains so that we keep improving it each time we do our activity. We have communities of practice and also communities of purpose and interest across the organization so that people can find each other, ask for help and offer advice, and also knowledge managers and other knowledge roles across the organization. So we have knowledge transition plans for the organization as a whole. We've already said that we're managing as an asset, so therefore by definition we need knowledge strategy plan for the organization as a whole, knowledge plans for projects and functions. And in simple terms, projects use and create knowledge on behalf of the organization, and functions are the long-term custodians of knowledge on behalf of the organization. And we also need individuals to have their own knowledge plans, where they address questions and look ahead and say things like, I want to be here in 5 years' time in my career. Which knowledge do I need then? Which knowledge do I have now? And so therefore I know which knowledge gaps I need to close, and then which actions I need to take as an individual to go and get that knowledge, whether it's to join a community or to join a project or to go and visit an expert. Then, as I mentioned, we need KM roles, a central KM team, which doesn't have to be huge, just a small number. Distributed KM managers out in the projects and the functions. Knowledge domain owners whose job it is to look after the critical knowledge areas or knowledge domains of the business. Community leaders, sponsors and facilitators. These are some of the typical roles you need if you're seriously managing your knowledge asset across the business. And then KM activities and processes. I've already touched on most of these. You will be routinely doing team learning processes across the organization, learning before, during and after. Tiered lessons management, by which I mean we don't just collect lessons learned and put them somewhere. We do learning reviews, for example, and we realize that some lessons are of local interest, so they might be tier 1. Some lessons identified are perhaps of more relevance to the wider project or the wider function, they're tier 2. And some lessons identified will be of interest and relevance to the whole organization, which will be tier 3. So we need some process, some structure and governance to make sure that we don't just collect lessons learned, but we identify lessons and we do something with them. We validate and distill them, we identify the actions and we apply the actions. Communities of practice, already mentioned those. Knowledge markets and cafes and individual knowledge transfer to mitigate the risk when people retire or depart the organization. So that's what knowledge management actually is and looks like. But what about making it happen in the organization? And my experience is, more than anything, this is about culture change. This is not something, where you just put in a database and expect it to work. This is complete and holistic across the organization. But one of the things I've learned is actually, in many ways, KM is quite simple. There's no long mathematical or chemical formulas and equations, thank goodness, otherwise I'd be struggling. KM is relatively simple, but it's not at all easy, because it's about that tricky thing with people. It's about culture change. That means there's the emphasis on leadership, not management. And of course, we could spend 2 days talking about the different theories and the distinction between leadership and management. But for me, it's about leadership because it's about change. It's about influencing people. It's about taking some risks, influencing teams and leadership and everybody from in communities and so on, right across the organization. And it's difficult. It's not at all easy. Management is more about routine, making sure we do things to a high standard. So in simple terms, leadership is about doing the right things. Management is about doing the things right. So leadership, it's important. That's where the emphasis is on introducing and implementing KM. So to make that happen, you need a full change management approach. Anybody that's been involved in any form of change management will know this. It's not something to be done lightly. You need a full approach to it. Extensive communications, who you're going to talk to and what you're going to say and when and why. Stakeholder management, perhaps using the RACI model. Extensive piloting, really going everywhere around the organization, prioritized by the business. Piloting both tactical activities, things like team learning processes, individual knowledge transfer communities, and at the strategic level, knowledge plans for projects, knowledge plans for functions, for example. Rewards and recognition, we've already talked about, this is about culture change, so people need to know that when they're doing good things in KM, they need to be recognized and rewarded by management. Management need to set the expectation for KM, and people like to be rewarded for good behaviors. Benefits realization, of course, and needs to be some of that, and training courses. Typically both one day for perhaps an overall introduction to KM and what it means to the business, but also specific tailored training courses for individual tactical activities like how to plan and deliver a peer assist or a learning review. And implementing KM typically comes in 4 broad stages. Stage 1, a baseline assessment, perhaps taking a month or so just to understand what the organization is already doing in KM, even if it doesn't appreciate it as being KM, it doesn't call it KM. But there may already be some good things already happening across the organization. Just a case of finding what they are. Then the strategy development, building on the baseline, might take 2 or 3 months, building in the views of senior management, saying, what do we want to do with KM then? What do we want our vision to be? What's our business imperative for doing this? How are we going to do it? Where are we going to focus our piloting, both tactical and strategic? Where are the main risks and opportunities and so on? And then the implementation, and that can take anything from 2 to 4 years for a medium-sized or large organization. And this is where we spend a lot of time piloting the processes, getting feedback from people right across the organization on what works and what doesn't, refining the approaches, the models and the frameworks. But ultimately, we need to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, enough of introducing this as a new thing. We need to make this permanently now, from this point on, part of the way we manage knowledge, our knowledge asset across the organization. So we need to create a formalized KM management framework that's then introduced and implemented in the organization, signed off by top management. It doesn't mean, of course, that KM never changes beyond that time. It just means that, say, look, enough of the piloting phase and implementation. This is now part of our standard way of working. It's part of our corporate process set, and all the governance will be in place to support it. Okay, so at that point, then I will finish. Just to say thanks for listening. I'm going to hand over to James now to talk a bit more about applying knowledge, this time through the Hydra system. Over to you, James. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. That was an exciting overview on really how key knowledge management is to our organizations, especially in the modern world. What I'd like to talk about briefly now is just how important knowledge management is to us at Hydra. For those of you that may not be aware, our project and resource management software is underpinned by a focus on knowledge and best practice. It's a hugely important and unique part of our software and services. And importantly, constant improvement and execution of best practices is our core vision. So what I'd like to share with you now is a few slides to explore how Hydra approach knowledge, and we'll also take a look at how some of that comes to the forefront with our business software and business intelligence. So for us, there's a focus on 4 points. Firstly, it's about the people, identifying those top performers in your organization with the most experience and best practice knowledge. It's about capturing that knowledge. And at Hydra, we create what we call blueprints to store that best practice and then deliver consistent projects. In doing so, we can achieve some significantly positive results, reducing project costs and improving the quality and consistency of the projects you deliver. But importantly, it's about leveling the playing field. It's about achieving those great results with any of your resources, not just necessarily the top performer. And then finally, we encourage constant improvement, being able to learn from each project and compare its performance to previous projects, and also the best practice. Having that point of comparison in the blueprints really enables you to see how you can perform better and learn from these experiences. So how does this all happen with Hydra? Well, it's a simple cycle of continuous improvement, put shortly. Firstly, we take that knowledge, the best practice blueprint for one type of project delivery. That's that blue section you're seeing on the left. This is much more than just a template. It includes a library of tasks and processes, defined roles and skills, and importantly, documents and guidance is the keyword there, on how the project should be run all the way down to the task level. So in the orange section, the key is to repeat from your success, right? So by building a blueprint once and then delivering many projects from it, using Hydra, the projects are managed, resources orchestrated, and each time your resources complete work, they always have guidance and instructions to help them along the way. This information is given to them in the right context when they need it most. And so that was kind of the green area, really, talking about how that person actually gets that guidance and completes the work off. And then finally, in the experience piece at the end, it's absolutely critical to enable your resources to tell you how long things take in reality and share their experiences on projects. Using built-in features to comment on the knowledge that's already in Hydra, perhaps suggest improvements for the future, and that all helps to drive collaborative improvement. Hydra knows, for example, who the experts are, and they can be on hand to respond to questions on the guidance, and they can control the flow of knowledge. Making these incremental improvements to your blueprint means over the next 100 projects that you deliver, you will deliver benefit. So just moving on to this slide here. This is sort of showing performance over time through using blueprints. And working with our customers over the years, we've seen firsthand how performance can be significantly improved by using knowledge-driven blueprints. In fact, some of our customers, newer members of the team, are able to deliver projects quicker and often more successfully than existing members of the team that have bad habits. By capturing the best practice from your star performers, as we call them, and then applying that to your teams, both old and new, you can reduce project costs, time to delivery, and importantly, improve the quality of your projects. So the theory is sound, but how does some of this surface through in practice? Well, let's take a moment to go and actually look at Hydra itself and have a brief look. Okay, so this is Hydra. This is a modern, easy-to-use tool, accessible via the web. So that's anywhere you've got an internet connection, you could be anywhere in the world. We have all sorts of features to manage portfolios of projects and project management, resource management, everything you'd expect from a tool that specializes in execution. I'm going to look at this blueprint section here. We'll only have a look at a very few, small set of sections in here just to focus on it. But this is the blueprinting section. And the idea behind this is, for each type of project you deliver in your organization, using blueprinting in Hydra is absolutely key to make sure you standardize your best practices and you apply your captured knowledge. As Paul mentioned earlier, knowledge assets are a key part of KM. And you can see here how many knowledge assets you have for each blueprint. A blueprint here could be the best practice to deliver a whole software installation. Maybe it's a piece of ERP software or something you're delivering, or many bits within a project. Remember that the blueprint contains all sorts of information. It's a library of tasks and processes. Maybe got some pre-built risks, deliverables, maybe some documents and reports in there as well. And it's all governed by a definition of the skills and profiles required to perform the work. And so that's the blueprint. Again, many projects are created from that and project managed, and then resources will get assigned work, right? So I'm going to go all the way to the other end and look at what a resource would see. So an end user could be an engineer, for example, what they might see in their to-do list and the guidance and knowledge that comes through to them. So we'll just have a look in this My Assignments area. So this is how baked-in knowledge comes through for your teams at the right time, in the right context. So this is showing me what I've got to do, and it allows me to update the teams on the completion of work or how long things have really taken. It's time sheeting, right? But one of the key features I'm going to pull out here is how to get assistance and guidance on how to perform the work. So I can open up this guide here. Okay. So this is the guide that's showing me how to complete the software installation task. And it's going to help ensure that I do this correctly with images, videos, and documents to support me along the way. Okay. Really, really important. It's knowledge coming through from a blueprint, driving repeatable success and giving people knowledge in the right context to do their job better. And it's about collaboration as well, right? So what if I want to help improve this knowledge at any time? At any time, I could add a comment against this guidance or instantly send a message to the member of the team responsible for this blueprint to get my message heard and my improvements added. Any changes made to the blueprint will then provide a positive impact for the next resource to perform this task and for the thousands after that. And so that's a really brief example of how knowledge can be captured in and applied through using Hydra. A very important yet effective means with which to empower your resources and deliver repeatable, constantly improving projects. But before we wind down the session today, there's one more thing I'd like to share with you. And that's a glimpse of what you can achieve with all the data that's being generated by Hydra delivering these projects over time. So another tool at our disposal is our Hydra Business Intelligence Engine. This allows us to create all sorts of powerful dashboards, giving executive insight to operational performance. You can report on all sorts of data you'd expect to in here. However, I'd like to focus on one particular dashboard. This is our performance dashboard, showing performance over time. This allows us to see the variability of our project delivery over time. Okay. So if we look at the top section here, what this is showing us is data from the last 28 times we've done a site installation across one project or many projects, importantly. And then across the bottom here, it's showing us the best practice tasks, and for each one, it's giving us a minimum amount of time it took, what the average time it's ever taken, and actually the worst case time it's ever taken to complete the task. Okay, so we can easily see how variable our performance is across these tasks to deliver these sites. For example, this has got high variance and maybe there's some lower sort of variance here. This is more predictable. We know how much this is going to cost, whereas this can be quite painful perhaps. Let's look at this particular task and drill down into it. This is what we call the hardware and software stress test. It's a task that you might do when you're doing one site installation. We've done many of these over the last weeks and months. So I can drill down here to find out a bit more about what's going on. And what you're seeing here is a large sample set. This could be hundreds, thousands of tasks or times that you've done a particular thing. And it's showing me what the task is, what project it was done on, and also which person was responsible for doing that. So you can see this top row here. This is where it took us the most time to do this. And we can see on this project, and we can see that it was done by Lauren here. But importantly, there may be a good reason why things took longer than we anticipated. And we can have an open conversation with the team to understand why. Hydra could prompt Lauren, for example, when she completes the work, to provide commentary on why things took so much longer than we thought. Through knowledge capture and a subsequent change to the blueprint, and therefore those guides that we saw, we can reduce the variability of this task, reduce the risk, and improve each site installation as a whole to bring that variance down. I'd just like to move on and show another dashboard here quickly. And this is all around efficiency. So we can make incremental improvements instantly to the blueprints and then have those subsequent projects improve. But how can we track that over time and see how we're doing? In this dashboard, I've selected the site installation again on the left-hand side, but on the right-hand side, we can show over months of the year or weeks of the year how we've been able to actually reduce both the duration and effort it's taken us to deliver these sites, these projects, trending down over time. So with those improvements we've been making to the blueprint through gained knowledge, sharing that knowledge through the guides, we are able to reduce the effort and duration over time. It's really important. Yeah. Really, really key feature of Hydra. So that's all I wanted to show you. I'm going to go back into the PowerPoint quickly and we can just do one last little slide before we can start to wind down. Okay. So in summary, Hydra helps you to capture the all-important knowledge and best practice. It aids you in project and resource management, generating experience along the way. It empowers your resources, enabling them to be more self-sufficient and deliver higher quality projects with less experience. And finally, Hydra enables you to take advantage of intelligence and improve your processes to drive down the costs and the effort it takes to do any kind of delivery. And so with that, I'd like to hand back over to Paul briefly for some closing comments, and we'll open up for a brief Q&A session as well.
Great stuff, James. That's really impressive. And as I say, I really like those 4 points. I mean, it sums it up all really. The point is we're taking knowledge, we're treating it seriously as an asset, we're taking the time to upgrade our processes and procedures. We've got the behaviors, the culture in place that says, I want to apply this, I want to add the benefits to the knowledge base for my improved performance. And as we saw in the slide there, costs come down, times come down, and people's skills go up, self-sufficiency goes up, all fantastic stuff. So we just to recap, we had the 2 sessions, myself introducing knowledge management more generally, knowledge as an asset, what it looks like and what it takes to implement it, and then James taking us through some key aspects of the Hydra system. So at this point, we'd like to hand over to see if there's any questions from any of our attendees.
Could you just bear with us a sec? We'll have a look to see if there's any questions. There's a question tool in the webinar that you've got there that if you want to contribute. Let's have a quick look. Okay, looks like we've got one question here. The question is, I presume this is talking about the dashboard. Your performance screen looks good, but can you also display that data in a Six Sigma report? So yeah, the answer to that is actually yes, we can do that. Good question. It will soon be possible to do that using the data to generate Six Sigma charts. So that will include everything you expect, the upper control line, the lower control line, and so on. So yeah, that's something that's really important, and absolutely the right kind of data that we can help generate. You know, with this variance model within certain constraints with the Six Sigma style report. So yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look, see if we've got any other questions.
There's one that's come through, I think it's aimed at me.
Okay, yeah.
It says, how does knowledge management relate to other professions like quality, risk, innovation and lean? Actually, that's a very good question. I found that one of the key things from implementing KM in 3 different sectors is that you need to build up good relationships with those other pre-existing professions and get the relationship off a good start. And one of the key things I've learned is that a profession of the same name may have some radically different outlooks in different organizations. So perhaps the best example of that was quality in one organization. They wanted to keep control of the learning piece, which of course was an area that we were interested in. So that took some careful discussions to manage expectations there. Whereas quality in another organization were only too keen to say, actually, we know that this whole learning side is very difficult. We'd much rather leave that to you KM guys, and we'll stand back and we'll give you the governance, quality and auditing support. And I've seen the similar sorts of debates with the same profession names in different organizations. So my advice really is don't assume anything. Professions with the same name can be quite different in outlook, depending on their maturity, depending on the personality and ambitions of the person leading it. So my advice is just to meet with those individuals, the leaders, and just set out those expectations and clarify those at the start.
Super, thanks for the question. We've got one more question here, which talks about, can Hydra help support us in capturing knowledge and best practice? And there's a follow-up question that's similar to that. Can you also train users on how to build the blueprints? Okay, so yes, we can help you capture your best practice. When we implement our software with you guys, with our customers, we are involved throughout. We run what we call a series of blueprint workshops that aim to help capture knowledge and build blueprint with you. And we'll talk to your top performers and subject matter experts to help do that. So yes, we can help there. And yeah, you don't need us necessarily to help build additional blueprints going forwards. We do train on how to do that and build and improve your own. And it's also worth mentioning that we have an additional service that we provide, or can provide, that helps collate performance data, helps you collate your performance data really, on a monthly, quarterly, or whatever frequency you require basis, and can help give you recommendations and improvements to those blueprints as well. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. Just have a look, see if we've got any more. I think we're okay there actually now. So what we'll do there is, which you should be seeing on your screen, some contact information there if you'd like to get any other questions over to us, and we'll respond, as soon as we can. And I guess we'll close down the session now. We're just saying thank you very much for everyone for joining. Thanks for your time this morning. Hope the session's been useful, and please do get in touch if you'd like to find out more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.